All right, welcome back to another YouTube lesson by your teacher, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm very glad that you guys are here. I'm also grateful that you have been communicating with me through email. Colleen has been emailing me several times. Hugo actually has been emailing me to let me know how he's doing, and he's checking in with me. So Hugo, I appreciate that. I've also gotten emails, private messages on Instagram from many of you. So I appreciate that. Keep it up. Let's continue keeping in touch with one another. If you have friends who are in our history class who are not doing this, please touch base with them, encourage them to follow up on Instagram at Rodriguez_class. Encourage them to check out the Google Classroom. I'm going to be incorporating things like Flipgrid, Edpuzzle to kind of make this more engaging. We're all making the best of a difficult situation. And thank you to those who tagged me in Instagram stories, sent me pictures, etc. of them working, which I was then able to share out. So I appreciate that. Let's keep that going for the next few weeks. For today's lesson, however, let's move on to political parties. You'll find that here, page 187 to 188. Today, we live in a world where there is so much information thanks to the internet. However, we also have to deal with the fact that because of the internet, there is a lot of fake news. There is a lot of misinformation that gets shared out. We saw that during the last election, where Russian bots were deliberately sending out misinformation in order to sway the election in one direction. And unfortunately, a lot of people retweeted, reshared, posted information that was false, that was actually very incorrect, inaccurate. And so we actually have a president today who goes out of his way to attack legitimate journalists, who refers to legitimate news sources as fake news because they are critical of him. But they are just doing their job as a free press. Thanks to the First Amendment, we have the right to a free press. That means we have the right to access news, we have the right to read newspapers, now political websites. But while we have the right to have access to a free press, the press also has certain rights and responsibilities, which we are going to discuss today. But this is not a new problem, right? Newspapers, going back to the Founding Fathers, were biased. They would sometimes go after political opponents. They would gear their reporting in favor of certain parties or individuals. So it doesn't surprise me, it shouldn't surprise any of us today that there are newspapers and news networks that do that still. So what are the rights and responsibilities of a free press given the First Amendment? A free press should be giving us accurate, objective information. They should be reporting the news. They should be telling us what's happening in our community, what's happening nationally, what is happening around the world. So for example, newspapers should be reporting the coronavirus, right? What can we do to prevent it? What is the government doing to contain it? Whether that's at the federal, state, or local level, right? The news media should be telling the public what is happening without any bias, without any misinformation, right? They should be communicating to us, the people, what is happening. Another function of a free press is to hold government accountable, to do investigative journalism into corruption, into actions taken by the government that are hurtful to the American people, right? Whether that has to do with taxes or cutting programs like food stamps or workplace safety or things related to the environment, right? On and on, on and on and on, right? Journalists, our free press, should be investigating these things and letting us, the people, know what's happening, including when political leaders are being corrupt and they're abusing their office for their own personal gain. And we saw that in the 1970s when reporters at the Washington Post, for example, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, they actually began the investigations that triggered the beginning of an impeachment against President Nixon, and President Nixon recognized that the impeachment would probably remove him from office, and so Nixon resigned from office. That's thanks to the efforts by reporters at the Washington Post. And newspapers should give us, the people, a voice. So when things are not happening in a way that benefits us, the people, newspapers should be speaking truth to power, holding politicians, holding the president accountable, even when the politicians, the president, doesn't like it. That's their job. And I know sometimes President Trump will get a little irritated with the press because they ask him difficult questions, but that's their job, right? That's their function. That's why we have a free press. But sometimes some news outlets, some misinformation can be spread because there are organizations or individuals who like to take advantage of the freedom of the press, right? The function of a press, but they don't like to uphold the actual responsibility of a free press. Namely, one, if you're going to report something, you better make sure it's accurate, right? You better make sure that you are not biased, that you are not coming from a place where you're interested in your own point of view, but that you're reporting information that's true and that is objective. But you also want news to be fair, right? So you don't want to hear all the time the media hammering one person or hammering one party. Journalists, the news, they're obligated to be fair. So if they're going to criticize one person for something, they need to criticize the other person who's doing the exact same thing, right? Fair. So to take a step back, looking at this time period, the early republic, newspapers had doubled. There were many newspapers across this young nation who had aligned themselves with certain political parties, certain political individuals. So, for example, the Gazette of the United States, they backed Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists. The National Gazette, they backed Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans. People were hungry for information. This was a time when there was growing literacy. And literacy means the ability to read. All right. So there was actually a European who was visiting the United States who remarked, the common people all know how to read and write. And also he noted that there were public libraries circulating books all over the country. People were clamoring. They were so excited for news, for information, for learning. Unfortunately, a lot of newspapers back then looked and sounded a lot like blogs or YouTube comments or Twitter comments today, right? Lots of emotion, lots of political bias, lots of anger and vitriol and just negative comments towards people they disagreed with, right? Criticizing other people maybe unfairly. There was also a lot of information that was mixed with rumor. So you had a combination of, well, this might be true, but this is also just a rumor or speculation, or in some cases just flat out misinformation, because they were trying to support their side and using information to attack the other side. Like I said, we still see this happening today, but there are standards for real journalists. There are standards. So if you're a journalist and you are not reporting the facts accurately, you're not getting multiple witnesses, you're not fact checking, you could be fired, right? You can lose your job. If you're just an individual on the internet with a vlog or a blog, or let's say you work for a political website or a political news station, right? They're probably not going to fire you because they're not doing actual real news. It's more like political commentary. And that's a good sign that that's not a credible or reliable source of information or news. During the early republic, you would have to have a pamphlet or you would have to have a newspaper and read it. It would have to be physically in your hands. But today, with Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media platforms, people are able to spread false information, fake news really quickly through their phone on digital social media platforms. So misinformation is spreading like wildfire in some places. And that was one of the big controversies of the 2016 presidential election. There were Russian bots, other sources of misinformation who were trying to sway the election one way. And the proof of that is in that so many fake news articles were being shared through social media. And a lot of people, unfortunately, based their opinions based on things that were proven to be false or untrue. And again, it's not because someone made a mistake. Oops, I accidentally posted something that was false. No, people were going out of their way to post and share information that was just not true. So I'm urging you all to be careful with the news sources that you are going to for information. Please don't share things that are not true. If you are inclined to share something that you think is true, fact check it. We have Google. Go to places like Snopes, PolitiFact, right? Do your homework by going online and doing the research. If it sounds crazy, it probably is crazy, right? So make sure you're double checking, make sure you're fact checking before you share something that's not true. You don't want to be part of the problem of fake news being spread, all right? So as we wrap up, here's my question for you. How would our country be different today if we did not have access to a free press? If we did not have access to the news, to journalism, to newspapers, to news networks, how would that make our democracy better, or how would it make our democracy worse? Okay, so that's my question to you. How would our country be different today if we did not have a free press, thanks to the First Amendment? So thank you very much. Make sure you guys are staying healthy, practicing social distancing, wash your hands, don't touch your face, okay? I hope you're not going out and playing and going to crowded places. Try your best to stay home, stay indoors. The only way we can beat the coronavirus is to stay indoors. If you aren't going out, you can't get it and you can't give it. So make sure you're staying indoors for the next couple weeks. And hopefully I will see you guys soon. So tighten up. I still don't really like that, but I'll see you guys later. Catch you on the flip side. What's cool? I don't know. Stay fresh, cheese bags. No, I should not. Tell me how I should sign off these videos. I don't know how to say goodbye. Anyway, bye.